At my son's Little League party, my niece dumped his signed team jersey into the grill fire while everyone watched. My brother clapped slowly. That jersey was wasted on him. Little losers deserve ashes. I smiled, opened my phone, and replayed the last 10 seconds. By morning, my brother read one league email and shook when he saw the last name. The signed jersey hit the charcoal at 4:47 on a Saturday afternoon, and 17 signatures curled into black smoke before anyone at the pavilion moved. Theo's championship jersey, the one every kid on the Ridgeline Bobcats had signed after the final out 3 weeks before. Number 14. Right field, his mother's number from college. The team had framed it in a cheap shadow box and set it on the trophy table next to the participation medals and the sheet cake that read Champions 2024. Sloan walked up to the table while the other kids were eating hot dogs. She was 11, 2 years older than Theo, and she played pitcher for the Wildcats, the team that lost in the semifinals. Nobody was watching her. She lifted the shadow box, cracked the back panel with her palm, pulled the jersey out by the collar, and dropped it into the open grill without looking at anyone. The polyester caught in under 2 seconds. The signatures went first. Theo's went last because it was on the back, near the collar, in careful block letters that Megan taught him before she died. Theo was sitting on the grass 12 feet away with a paper plate balanced on his knee. He saw the smoke before he understood what was burning. When he stood up, his mother's softball glove was still on his left hand, the Wilson A2000 she had broken in over 4 college seasons, and his face did what 9-year-old faces do when the world stops making sense. It folded. Vince started clapping. Slow, deliberate, 3 claps, spaced out, the way a man claps when he wants every head to turn. My brother was standing next to the grill with a Coors in his right hand and his coaching lanyard still around his neck, and he looked at the burning jersey and then at Theo and then at me. That jersey was wasted on him. Little losers deserve ashes. 26 parents and at least 15 kids heard it. Nobody moved. A woman near the drink cooler set her plate down. A father on the bench closest to the grill stood halfway up and then sat back down. 2 kids near the batting cage stopped throwing and stared. Vince kept going. He had an audience now, and my brother has never met an audience he didn't perform for. You know what Megan would say if she could see that kid standing in right field picking grass? She'd wonder what happened. She had a scholarship. She had talent. And she married a man who pulls wire through crawl spaces for a living, and now her son flinches when a ground ball comes at him. Don't look at me like I'm the problem, Nolan. I put my daughter on a mound because I had the ambition to do it. You put your boy in a dead woman's glove and called it parenting. The pavilion went still. Not the good kind of still. The kind where people look at their shoes because they just heard something they cannot unhear. A mother near the dessert table picked up her son and walked to the parking lot without turning around. My phone was already recording. That part was instinct, not planning. When you spend 15 years as a commercial electrician, you document everything. Every panel, every junction box, every splice, every job site, before you touch a wire and after you finish. My phone was in my hand the moment Sloan reached for the shadow box, because something in her walk told me this was rehearsed. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look around first. She walked to that table the way a kid walks when a parent has already told them what to do. Less than a minute of footage, but enough to preserve everything. The drop, the flames, the applause, every word that followed. I played it back, not for myself. I held the screen up so the parents at the nearest picnic table could see it. Then the ones behind them. Nobody spoke. The video played twice, the audio tinny in the September air, and Vince's voice came through the speaker clear enough to make 2 mothers look away from the screen. I almost hit him. Right there, in front of every family in the Ridgeline Little League. My hand was already a fist at my side, and my weight had shifted forward onto the balls of my feet. And the only thing that stopped me was Theo's hand gripping the back of my shirt. 9 years old. Knuckles white in the fabric. Not pulling me. Just holding on. The way a kid holds on when the one person who is supposed to keep things steady starts to vibrate. I unclenched my hand. Picked up Theo's bat bag. Walked to the parking lot. The glove was still on his hand. He didn't take it off until we were in the truck, and even then, he set it on the seat between us instead of putting it in the bag, like he needed to know where it was. If you've ever had someone tear down your child in front of a crowd and use your dead wife's name to do it, then you already know what the drive home feels like. And if this is your first time watching Betrayal Unfolded, stay with this one. Because what my brother didn't know is that I had been sitting on something for 3 weeks. Something that made his little performance at that grill the last mistake he would ever make in this league. Megan died in March of 2022. A 3-car collision on Route 9, a Tuesday morning. Rain on a curve that the county had been meaning to repave for 2 years. She was 31. Theo was 7. The hospital called my work phone at 9:14 a.m. while I was pulling conduit through a ceiling joist at a dentist's office renovation. The foreman drove me to the ER. By the time I got there, they had already stopped trying. The first week was logistics. The second week was silence. The third week was Theo standing in the kitchen at 6 and holding a cereal bowl and asking when Mom was coming home from the hospital, and me realizing that I had not said the actual words to him yet because I could not make my mouth form them. Megan's softball glove showed up in conversations I wasn't expecting. A friend from her college team called and asked if I wanted her old gear. I said no. Then Theo found the glove in the garage one night in July, hanging on a hook above the workbench where Megan kept her gardening shears and her batting gloves and a framed photo of her college team. He pulled it off the hook and tried it on. It was 2 sizes too big. His hand disappeared inside it. Mom's glove fits, he said. That was all. He was 7, and it didn't fit at all, and he said it fit, and I didn't correct him. 3 days after the funeral, something else had appeared on my porch. A youth fielding glove, brand new, sitting on the railing next to a Little League registration form and a sticky note. The handwriting was blocky, unhurried. Bring him when he's ready. No rush. The field isn't going anywhere. Hank Avila, 61 at the time, retired postal carrier and the president of the Ridgeline Little League for 16 years. He didn't knock, didn't come inside, didn't call to explain or offer condolences or ask how I was doing. Just left the glove and drove away in his pickup with the league decal on the tailgate. That was Hank. He didn't talk about doing things. He did them and left them where you could find them. We drove to the field on a Saturday morning in August. Hank was raking the infield. He saw the Wilson A2000 on Theo's hand, the one that was 2 sizes too big, and he nodded once. Right field is open, he told him. No speech, no pep talk, just a position and a place to stand. Theo walked out there and stood with his glove up, and he didn't catch a single ball that first practice, and he didn't care. That fall, the league needed electrical work. The field lights were 20 years old, undersized, and half the bulbs were dead. Night games were impossible. The board was looking at $42,000 in materials alone, plus labor. Hank brought it up at a meeting, and 3 board members winced at the number. I raised my hand. Said I would do the labor for free if the league covered materials. 47 days of evenings and weekends. New poles, new lead arrays, new wiring, new transformer, new scoreboard, new PA system. My company, Hargrove Electric, handled the permits and the inspections. When the lights came on for the first night game that October, every kid on the field looked up like they were seeing stars. Megan would have loved that part. She always said the best things I built were the ones nobody paid me for. My brother never mentioned the lights. Not once. Not when the first night game drew 200 people. Not when the league newsletter ran a photo of the new scoreboard. Not when Hank thanked me at the end of season banquet in front of 150 families. Vince sat at his table that night and scrolled through his phone while Hank said my name. Vince was 4 years older, 37 now, the college graduate, the regional sales director at Pinnacle Auto Group, the man who sold $60,000 trucks and wore a sport coat to youth baseball games. Our father, before he died in 2020, had a framing system for the 2 of us that never changed. Vince was the business mind, and I was the one who was good with his hands. He said it at Thanksgiving once, with both of us at the table, like he was describing two different species. Vince closes deals. Nolan fixes things. It was not a compliment. It was a ranking. The system went deeper than words. When Vince graduated college, Dad co-signed a car loan for him. When I finished trade school and got my journeyman's license, Dad said, "Good. Now you'll always have work. No handshake, no dinner, no cosign." When I started Hargrove Electric and landed my first commercial contract, Dad asked if I had health insurance. When Vince got promoted to regional sales director, Dad called every relative in the family. The smaller betrayals came before the big one. They always do. In 2019, Vince borrowed my cordless drill set, my oscillating tool, and my cable tester for a quick project at his house. The drill set was a DeWalt 20V Max, the kind you break in over years until the grip fits your hand exactly. The cable tester cost $200 new. I never saw any of it again. 6 months later, a neighbor told me he saw the drill set at Vince's yard sale, priced at $40. When I brought it up at a family dinner, Vince laughed across the table and said, "You've got 10 of those, Nolan. Don't be dramatic." My father looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Tammy, Vince's wife, changed the subject to Sloan's pitching stats. That was the family system. Vince took. Everyone adjusted. And the person who noticed was the problem. In August 2022, 5 months after Megan died, Vince volunteered to be the league's equipment coordinator. The role was simple: order bats, helmets, catcher's gear, bases, and training equipment using league funds. Submit receipts, get reimbursed. The budget came from registration fees, and every family in the league paid $850 per season per kid. Vince told Hank he had vendor connections through the dealership. Nobody questioned it. He was Vince Hargrove. He coached his daughter's team. He shook hands at every game and knew every parent's first name. His brother, the electrician, just wired the lights and said nothing. 3 weeks before the barbecue, on a Monday night in early September, I was at the field doing routine maintenance on the light arrays. One of the lead drivers on pole 6 was pulling uneven current, probably a loose neutral, the kind of thing that takes 20 minutes to diagnose and 2 minutes to fix. While I was up on the lift checking connections, I noticed the scoreboard, not the display. The power supply. The draw was wrong. When you install electrical systems for a living, you read amperage the way a musician reads pitch. Something out of tune stands out before you can name it. The scoreboard was pulling 3.2 amps at full brightness. The model the league had been invoiced for, a Profield 4800 digital unit, draws 5.1 amps. That's not a rounding error. That's a different product. I climbed down, walked to the back panel, and read the model plate with my headlamp. Profield 2200. Retail, $2,800. The league had been invoiced $6,100 for the 4800 model. The difference was $3,300, and it was sitting in someone's pocket. My first thought was a vendor error. My second thought was to check the other invoices. My third thought, the one that made my stomach tighten, was that I already knew whose name was on every equipment purchase order for the last 2 years. I didn't call anyone that night. Drove home, opened my laptop, and pulled every equipment invoice Vince had submitted to the league. The board had digitized its records when I joined as a member 3 weeks earlier, and every receipt was in a shared drive. I had been appointed facility director on August 28th. A quiet vote, 5-2, because Hank said the man who built the infrastructure should have a seat at the table. Vince didn't know about the appointment. He never read the board emails. 11 invoices. 11 items where the actual product delivered was cheaper than the product invoiced. Helmets, $1,800 actual cost, $3,300 invoiced. Batting cage netting, $1,200 actual, $2,100 invoiced. Catcher's gear sets, $640 actual, $1,150 invoiced. Base sets, pitching screens, ball buckets, batting tees. Every single purchase inflated by 40 to 80%. Total skimmed, $14,200. I called Hank the next morning and told him what I had found. He didn't ask me to repeat myself. He called Dawson Sporting Goods on speakerphone from his kitchen table and authorized release of the league's full order history to the audit committee. With his written authorization forwarded to the sales rep, the records came back in 4 minutes. Every actual price matched the cheaper product. Every invoice Vince submitted to the board matched the inflated number. He had been ordering the budget version, submitting receipts for the premium version, and pocketing the difference for 2 years. From a league funded by $850 registration fees paid by families with 9-year-olds. Where the money went wasn't hard to guess, even before the formal audit confirmed it. Everyone in the family knew Vince bought a bass boat in March 2023. It sat in his driveway under a cover that didn't quite fit. Everyone knew Sloan had a private pitching coach named Dana who charged $80 an hour. Because Vince mentioned it at every family event, and everyone knew Pinnacle Auto Group had restructured commissions 18 months earlier. Because Vince stopped picking up dinner tabs around the same time. $14,200. 2 years. From a league funded by families paying $850 per kid so their children could play baseball. The formal audit that came later filled in the rest. His salary at Pinnacle was $72,000 on paper, but with the commission restructure, his actual take-home had dropped closer to $54,000. Tammy made $38,000 as a dental hygienist. The mortgage was $1,840 a month. Credit card balances across 3 accounts sat near $11,000. The league money had been filling cracks in a foundation that was already shifting, and without it, the math stopped working. I sat with that knowledge for 9 days. 9 days of knowing my brother was a thief and not telling anyone. 9 days of coming home from job sites and looking at the supplier confirmations on my kitchen table and arguing with myself about what it would cost to do the right thing. The conflict was real. Exposing Vince meant losing what was left of the family. Our parents were both dead. Vince and I were the only Hargroves left, aside from Theo and Sloan. Telling the board meant criminal charges, league bans, and a level of public humiliation that my brother would never forgive. Part of me wanted to call him privately, show him the invoices, tell him to pay it back and resign and never do it again. Handle it like brothers. And then the barbecue happened. The moment Sloan dropped that jersey into the coals. The moment Vince clapped and said those words about Megan and Theo and the crawl spaces and the dead woman's glove, every question I had been sitting with for 9 days answered itself. He didn't deserve a private call. He didn't deserve the courtesy of a warning. He had stood in front of every family in the league and called my son a loser and used my dead wife's name as a weapon. And the whole time, he was the one stealing from their kids. I sat in my truck in the driveway after getting Theo inside. The boy was in his room with the door closed. Megan's glove was on the passenger seat next to the bat bag. The leather was dark from years of use, creased in the palm, still shaped around a ball she caught a decade ago. I almost deleted the invoice files. Almost told myself it wasn't worth it, that Theo needed stability and not a family war, that the right thing to do was protect what was left. But Megan never let anything go. She chased every fly ball into the gap. She ran out every ground ball to first. She slid headfirst into second base in a conference tournament game that was already decided because the play still mattered. She would not have deleted those files, and she would not have let a man who stole from children use her name to humiliate her son. I picked up my phone and called Beth Salazar. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button for Betrayal Unfolded. What comes next is the part my brother never saw coming. Beth was a civil litigation attorney, 44, with an office above a sandwich shop on Main Street and a reputation for handling hoe disputes, contract claims, and small business fraud cases that nobody else wanted to touch. She wasn't flashy. She was thorough. When I met her Monday morning with the folder, she spread the supplier confirmations and league invoices across her desk and read for 11 minutes without looking up. "This is straightforward fraud," she said. He inflated invoices submitted to a nonprofit youth organization and retained the difference. The league is the victim. You're a board member with fiduciary responsibility. You have standing and obligation to file a formal complaint and request an audit. What happens to him if I file? At 14T200, the confirmed loss creates serious criminal exposure. Depending on how the prosecutor charges it, he could be looking at felony theft or fraud. At minimum, he owes restitution. At maximum, he faces criminal prosecution. He's my brother. Beth looked at me over her reading glasses. He stole from children, Mr. Hargrove. The fact that he's your brother doesn't change the invoices. She advised me privately first. Then Hank called an emergency session with the executive committee, and the board voted to retain Beth as lead counsel for the audit and any resulting action. With that authority, she drafted 2 documents. The first was a formal fraud complaint to the full board of directors, signed by me as facility director, requesting an immediate audit of all equipment purchases from August 2022 through August 2024. The second was an attorney demand letter on behalf of the league addressed to Vincent Hargrove, requesting voluntary restitution of $14,200 within 30 days, with notice that failure to comply would result in a civil suit and a referral to the county prosecutor's office. I also filed a separate code of conduct complaint with the video from the barbecue attached. Intentional destruction of another player's personal property during a league event. Public verbal abuse and harassment directed at a child participant. Endorsement and encouragement of the act by a league coach, constituting unsportsmanlike conduct and reputational harm to the organization. 4 sections of the Code of Conduct cited, each one a separate violation. The night before the complaint went to the board, I almost didn't file it. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the paperwork in front of me and Beth's text on my phone, confirming the demand letter was ready. And something in my chest pulled back. This was my brother. My only brother. The last person alive who remembered what our mother looked like when she laughed. Filing this meant that was over. All of it. Then I looked at the counter. Megan's glove was sitting next to the coffee maker where Theo had left it after practice. The leather was cracked along the web, and the lacing was frayed, and the pocket still held the shape of every ball she had ever caught. Beth's text glowed on my phone. The folder is ready. Hank saved you a seat. I signed the complaint and drove it to the league office the next morning. Hank called me Thursday night. His voice was steady, unhurried. The voice of a man who had spent 30 years delivering mail through heat and ice and barking dogs without raising his pulse. I watched that video 3 times, Nolan. Every board member has a copy. And I pulled the invoice file this morning myself. You built this field. You wired every light on it. Nobody is going to let a man who steals from this league tell you or your son that you don't belong here. He paused. The board email goes out Saturday morning. Appointments, audit announcement, schedule updates. Your name is on it as facility director. He'll see it. Saturday morning. September 22nd. The email went out at 8:14 a.m. Standard formatting, league letterhead with a cartoon bobcat, a bulleted list of updates. New field schedule for the fall travel season. Equipment inventory audit announced, effective immediately, all purchasing records under review. And at the bottom, under board appointments, Nolan Hargrove, facility director. Vince read it at 8:31 a.m. I know the time because my phone buzzed at 8:32 with a text from his number. 4 words. What did you do? He was at my garage by noon. The garage door was up. I was on a stool at my workbench reorganizing cable reels, which is what I do on Saturday mornings when I am trying not to think about anything. Vince pulled into the driveway in his company SUV, the one with the Pinnacle Auto Group decal on the driver's side door, and walked in without knocking or asking or waiting. You need to sit down, Nolan. We need to talk about this like adults. I'm not sitting down in my own garage. Say what you came to say. He paced. 3 steps toward the shelving, 3 steps back. His hand went to the back of his neck, then his hair, then his pocket. He was wearing a polo shirt and khakis, the weekend version of his dealership uniform, and there was a vein pulsing in his neck that I hadn't seen since he lost a fistfight in high school. You're on the board now? Since when? You went behind my back, got yourself a board seat, and now you're running some kind of audit? Over equipment? Over bats and base sets? I let him talk. This is family, Nolan. Family. You don't drag family business into a board meeting. You don't put our name on some kind of investigation. If you had a problem with how I handled purchasing, you come to me. You come to me privately, like a brother, and we work it out. Like we worked out the drill set? His jaw tightened. That was nothing. That was $15 worth of tools. The drill set sold for $40 at your yard sale. The cable tester was $200. And the oscillating tool was another $90. But you're right, let's not talk about tools. Let's talk about the ProField 2200. Something in his eyes shifted. Not fear yet. Recognition. The recognition of a man who just realized the conversation is not going where he planned. You submitted 11 invoices to the league over 2 seasons. Every one of them was inflated. The scoreboard you ordered was a ProField 2200, retail $2,800. You invoiced the league for a ProField 4800 at $6,100. The difference was $3,300. The helmets you bought cost $1,800. You invoiced $3,300. The batting cage netting was $1,200. You charged $2,100. Catcher's gear, $640 actual, $1,150 invoiced. Bases, pitching screens, tees, ball buckets, 11 items, 40 to 80% markup on every one. Total, $14,200. He didn't move. That $14,200 came from registration fees. $850 per family per season. Families with 9-year-olds and 7-year-olds who trusted the league to put that money into equipment for their children. I know you bought the boat. I know what Dana charges for pitching lessons. I do not need your bank statements to know where the league's money went. That is fraud. That is theft from a nonprofit youth organization. That is stealing from children. Vince, you don't have the full picture. Those invoices, there were vendor credits, there were overruns on some orders. The pricing was different when I placed. I called Dawson Sporting Goods. They pulled every order under the league account. Every actual price matches the cheaper product. Every invoice you submitted matches the inflated number. There are no vendor credits. There are no overruns. There is a man who ordered budget equipment, submitted premium invoices, and kept the difference for 2 years. This is a mistake. You're making a mistake that you can't take back. The board already has the file. My attorney has a copy. The county prosecutor's office receives a referral on Monday unless you agree to full restitution of $14,200 by October 15th. His face changed. Whatever was holding the structure up let go, and the rest followed. You stood in front of 26 parents and called my son a loser. You said Megan would be mortified. You said I put my boy in a dead woman's glove and called it parenting. You said the man who pulls wire through crawl spaces didn't have the ambition to raise an athlete. I kept my voice flat. Not low for drama. Low because the facts were loud enough. That man built every light on that field. And he found your fraud in 4 minutes because the scoreboard you bought draws 3.2 amps and the one you invoiced draws 5.1, and you didn't think anyone would check because you have never once in your life paid attention to what I actually do. Nolan, please, listen to me. Megan's son earned that jersey. Your daughter burned it. And you paid for her pitching coach with $14,200 you stole from 9-year-olds. The collapse happened in 3 stages. First, his shoulders. They dropped forward, not dramatically, just 2 inches, the way a structure shifts when the load-bearing wall gives out. Then his hands. They went to his thighs, palms flat, fingers spread, pressing down as if the floor were tilting under him. Then his breathing. Shallow, irregular, the exhales coming in stutters like a man trying to breathe through a straw. His face lost color from the forehead down, a slow drain, and his eyes went to the garage floor and stayed there. He tried to bargain. What if I pay it back? Half now, half in 6 months. We can tell the board it was an accounting error, and I'll resign from the coordinator position and we move on. Nobody has to know. The board already knows. Every member has the file. His face twitched. Then I'll go to the meeting myself. I'll tell them it was a mistake. The vendors overcharged and I didn't catch it. And I'll write a check for the full amount. You don't have $1,400, Vince. If you did, you wouldn't have been skimming equipment invoices for 2 years. Where exactly is that check coming from? I'll figure it out. Give me 90 days. 60, I'll sell the boat. I'll cover every cent. Just pull the prosecutor referral. The referral isn't mine to pull. The board voted. Then what do you want? What is this? Revenge? Because your feelings got hurt at a barbecue? This is a fraud complaint filed by a board member who discovered that a volunteer was stealing from the organization. That is what this is. Tammy doesn't know everything. If this goes public, it'll destroy her. It'll destroy Sloan. You want to punish an 11-year-old girl because her dad made bad decisions? You taught your 11-year-old daughter to burn a 9-year-old's jersey. You clapped while she did it. Don't use her as a shield now. Come on. Come on, Nolan. His voice thinned, lost its rehearsed authority. Dad would be rolling in his grave right now. You don't do this to blood. You don't bring lawyers into family. Dad would never have let you do this to your own brother. I walked to the workbench, picked up the folder Beth had prepared, and held it out. 11 invoices with the actual prices highlighted in yellow. Supplier confirmations. Board resolution. Attorney demand letter. Restitution schedule. The tabs were color-coded because Beth is the kind of attorney who color-codes tabs. He didn't take it. I set it on the stool between us. This is the last time I stand in a room with you and explain what you did. The board has the invoices. Beth has the video. And I have nothing left to say to the man who called my son a loser and stole from his teammates. No more holidays. No more phone calls that start with what you need. No more standing in a room while someone with my last name tells me what Megan would think of the way I raise her son. I pressed the button on the wall. The garage door came down. Vince was still standing in the driveway when it closed. 5 days later, the board met at the Ridgeline Recreation Center. Conference Room B, the one with the folding tables and the motivational posters and a clock on the wall that ran 3 minutes slow. 7 board members at the table, Hank presiding. 2 parents in the back row who had come after hearing about the meeting through the league text chain. Vince was asked to attend. Tammy came with him and sat in the last chair by the door. Hank read the findings without editorializing. 11 inflated invoices. $14,200 in unaccounted funds. Supplier confirmations from Dawson Sporting Goods. Board resolution to refer findings to the county prosecutor's office and to demand full restitution within 30 days. A second resolution to remove Vincent Hargrove from all volunteer positions, effective immediately. A third to suspend Sloan Hargrove from all Ridgeline Little League activities for 1 full season for destruction of personal property at a league event and violation of the Player Code of Conduct. Because the discipline did not extend beyond the local organization, she could register elsewhere. Vince tried to speak twice. The first time, he stood up and said the invoices were estimates and that any discrepancy was a bookkeeping issue that he would be happy to reconcile. Hank asked him, without raising his voice, to explain why every single discrepancy went in the same direction. Vince opened his mouth, closed it, and sat back down. The second time, he said Sloan's suspension was excessive for a kid who got emotional and made a mistake. A board member named Gail Odom pushed her chair back from the table and removed her reading glasses. She burned a child's championship jersey in front of his teammates while her father clapped and called the child a loser. That is not a mistake, Mr. Hargrove. That is conduct. A parent in the back row, a man named Rick, who coached the team Theo had beaten in the finals, leaned over to the parent next to him and said something that made the other man nod slowly and look at the floor. The vote was unanimous on all 3 resolutions. Tammy stared at the table through the entire proceeding. She did not speak. She did not look at Vince. When Hank asked Vince for his coaching badge, Vince reached for the lanyard around his neck, unclipped it, and set it on the table. His fingers shook on the clasp. He couldn't get the pin to release on the first try. When it finally came free, the badge made a small sound on the table that was louder than it should have been. Nobody said goodbye to them on the way out. The financial fallout started the following week. Beth filed the formal demand letter on October 1st. The county prosecutor's office opened an investigation on October 3rd. Vince's employment agreement at Pinnacle required him to disclose any fraud investigation because he handled customer financing applications and dealership deposits. He didn't disclose it. When a local newspaper ran a short item about the league audit and named him, Pinnacle's compliance office found out on their own. He was suspended pending internal review on October 8th. 2 weeks later, he was terminated for failure to disclose and for conduct inconsistent with his financial responsibilities. $72,000 a year, company vehicle, commission structure. Gone, a dealership employee drove the company SUV out of his driveway the next morning while Vince handed over the keys on the front porch in his bathrobe. The bass boat went up on Facebook Marketplace. Asking price, $6,400. No offers the first week. No offers the second. Sloan's private pitching coach was informed that sessions would be paused indefinitely. The coach, who knew 3 other league families through weekend clinics, did not return Tammy's follow-up call or her text. Without Vince's income, the household ran on Tammy's $38,000. Her take-home after taxes and deductions landed somewhere around $2,500 a month. The mortgage alone was $1,840. Credit card minimums across 3 accounts added another $480. That left less than $200 for utilities, insurance, groceries, fuel, and everything else a family of 3 needs to function. The math didn't collapse so much as it stopped pretending. There was no cushion left, and no one left to ask. The social fallout moved quieter, but cut deeper. The league group chat, the one with 43 parents and 6 coaches, went silent whenever Vince's name came up. 3 volunteers who had coached alongside him for years stopped answering his texts. One of them, a man who had been his assistant coach for the Wildcats, blocked his number without explanation. A father from the Bobcats who had been at the barbecue saw Vince at a gas station a week later and turned his shopping cart around to use a different aisle. Tammy's dental office lost 2 patients that month, both league families, both without a reason given on the cancellation form. Her hygienist schedule dropped by 4 appointments a week. Her boss didn't say anything, but the schedule spoke for itself. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Sloan started at a new league 20 miles away in the next county. Different uniform, different field, different kids who didn't know her name or her father's. Tammy drove her 35 minutes each way for practices, and the silence in the car on the way home was different from the silence in the car on the way there. On the way there, it was nervousness. On the way home, it was something else. "Dad, why can't I play at the old field anymore?" Vince was driving, his hands adjusted on the steering wheel, left hand dropping to 6 o'clock, right hand gripping at 2. He opened his mouth. Whatever he was going to say didn't make it past his teeth. He reached for the radio dial and turned up a country song, and the music filled the car, and Sloan looked out the window at the strip malls and gas stations of a county that wasn't hers. She didn't ask again. Saturday, October 12th, 4 weeks after the barbecue. The travel team held its first practice. Hank had organized the selection. 8 kids from across the league, chosen by a committee of coaches, invited to play a competitive fall schedule against teams from neighboring counties. Theo made the roster. The kid who stood in right field, picking grass, according to his uncle. The kid who flinched when a ground ball came at him, according to a man who stole from the equipment fund that bought those ground balls. That kid batted .310, turned the relay throw that saved the semifinal, and laid down the sacrifice bunt that moved the tying run in the championship. The coaches saw it. The selection committee put his name on the roster because the numbers left them no choice. The field lights came on at 6:15 a.m. My lights. 47 days of evenings and weekends. New poles and LED arrays and a transformer I sized for exactly this load. The hum was low and steady, the way good wiring sounds when everything is connected and nothing is pulling what it shouldn't. Theo stood in right field. Megan's glove on his hand. The leather was dark, creased, shaped by 1,000 catches that started before he was born and continued every Saturday since. The first fly ball of practice went up against the October sky, pale blue, the sun still low, and Theo drifted back 2 steps, squared under it, and caught it clean in the pocket with both hands. The sound it made when it hit the leather carried across the empty park. Vince's coaching badge sat in a drawer at the recreation center, unclaimed. His boat sat in the driveway under a tarp. Still listed at $6,400, no offers. Sloane played in a league where nobody knew her last name, and the drive home took 35 minutes through a county where Tammy didn't know anyone and Vince didn't go. The league letterhead read, Nolan Hargrove, facility director. The name was on the field permit, on the insurance policy, on the scoreboard that pulled 2 amps, because I knew the difference and my brother never thought to check. The lights came on at 6:15. Theo caught the first ball of practice with his mother's glove, and the sound it made when it hit the leather was the only sound in the park that mattered. If this story hit you the way it hit me to live it, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded. Leave a comment and tell me what you would have done at that barbecue. And the next time someone tells you that your child isn't enough, remember this. The kid they called a loser made the travel team. The man they called a handyman built the lights. And the brother who stole from 9-year-olds is still trying to sell that boat.